Shabbat Shalom. As Rabbi Willis said, if this were a normal Shabbat Shuvah, our beloved Mike Rosenberg of blessed memory would be standing here to teach and inspire us. Mike was a learned and proud Jew, kind and giving, generous, often anonymously, funny, an amazing teacher. He was active and proactive, an inclusive leader, our community's glue. You can surely tell me at Kiddush I omitted 20 other descriptors of this amazing man, missed by all who found themselves in his orbit. So being true to the theme of this Devar Torah today, I stand humbly before you, inspired by these attributes, in no way claiming to have them myself, because I can't be Mike. But maybe there are ways I can be like Mike, while still being just David Ezekiel. When I was younger, I wanted to be a fireman. I loved the fire trucks, the uniforms, the bravery, and how firemen always seemed to save the day. Then, I wanted to be an astronaut. I was enthralled with the fearlessness, the adventure, the excitement, the heroism. As my aspirations evolved, I dreamed of becoming a professional athlete. Funny for a short, rotund kid with pretty bad athletic prowess. Athletes were strong, skilled like no one else, and adored. Why not me? Alas, I am neither a firefighter, nor an astronaut, nor an athlete. As I came to grips with my excelling at nothing particularly useful or exciting, I fortunately realized there were other role models in my life. I have shared with you at length what my parents of blessed memory meant to me. My dad was smart, self-sufficient, funny, generous, outgoing, curious, and ambitious. He was particularly family-oriented, fiercely loyal, providing unconditional, unbounded love for all of us. My mom, in a sense more complex, was a giving, loving mother. She was a great friend and a teacher. She, too, gave unconditionally and was empathetic in all ways. Starting in my high school years and lasting till he died decades later, my boss at Theater Pharmacy, Chris Veneer, was my non-parental teacher, life coach, and mentor. He was strict, disciplined, driven, forgiving, but demanding. Similarly, yet differently than my parents, Chris taught me to strive, to do my best at everything, to be respectful of everyone. Unlike the astronaut, the fireman, or the athlete, I knew my parents, and Chris, and later Mike. I could learn from them in a more organic way, absorbing from them what felt right for me, challenging myself to adopt some of the characteristics I've detailed for you as my own, while striving to improve where I fell short. Each in his or her own way was my dugma, my exemplar, my role model. Dugma can also mean prototype. I like that. Bits and pieces of these people were part of the prototype David Ezekiel and the current David Ezekiel. In all areas of my life, I have been truly blessed to have met and learned from many a dugma. Work colleagues, friends, family, teachers, community members, my rabbis, my rebbitzins, my wife, and now my kids, to name a few. In relationship with each of these dugmaot, I learn from their example, trying to emulate what I can as I eternally strive towards becoming a better me. One might say the current me, for better or for worse, has been created in their images, an evocative phrase on purpose. In Bereshit, we are taught about our ultimate dugma. Vayomer Elohim na'aseh Adam b'tzalmenu kidmutenu. And God said, let us make humankind in our image, after our likeness. Vayivra Elohim et Adam b'tzalmo, b'tzelem Elohim bara'oto. And God created humankind in the divine image, creating it in the image of God. Who was God speaking to? What does our image mean? Our commentary suggests God was addressing angels and the just created animals. In a text called Ma'aseh Nisim, we learn an angel can be an object that is used to fulfill the divine will. It has, however, no free will itself in the performance of the act. Animals, says our commentary, share some primal qualities with humans, the need to eat, to mate, to sleep, but don't have the godlike qualities of creativity, compassion, morality, and self-consciousness. Breshit tells us God blew into his nostrils a soul of life, and the human became a living being, possessing vitality, as do animals, but also possessing the faculties of understanding and speech. While we humans share qualities with both angels and animals, we are neither pre-programmed nor driven exclusively by instinct. What then makes a human different from angels and animals? Maimonides, Rambam, teaches that man has complete freedom by virtue of his uniquely human free will. If there were no free will, he says, there would be no place for Torah. In essence, with the free will we have from God, we, unlike angels or animals, can choose between Tov and Ra, good and bad. After Eve and then Adam succumbed to the serpent and ate of the tree of knowledge of good and bad, God says, perhaps ruefully, Hein Adam haya ki achad mimenu lada'at tov v'ra. Now humankind has become like one of us, knowing good and bad. So in our image seems to mean that humans have characteristics of animals, of angels, and of God. The main differentiator is that humans not only know the difference between good and bad, but they also have the free will to choose either or something in between. We use the term B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God, freely to remind ourselves of the inherent value of every human so made. Biblical scholar Lois Tverberg writes, "What is the significance of saying we are made in God's image? It's clear that it means that we share something in common with God that nothing else in creation does. Thus, human life is uniquely precious to God." As proof, she brings Breshit, chapter 9, in the story of Noah. Shofech dam ha'adam ba'adam damo, yishafech ki b'tselem Elohim asa et ha'adam. Whoever sheds human blood, by human hands shall one's blood be shed. For in the image of God was humankind made. I listed for you attributes of some of my human dugmaot, role models and exemplars, who influenced who I have become so far and whose images continue to inspire me. But as I am a searching Jew, something I shared with Mike, I feel obligated to make the same list about God, my ultimate dugma. For me, the catch-all phrase, image of God, is insufficient and vague. What does it mean that I'm made in the image of God? What attributes and characteristics are in me, in all of us, which make us uniquely precious? In essence, what is our potential as human beings over animals or angels, given that we have the free will to choose between Tov and Ra? The full answer is totally unknowable. We can never fully comprehend God. In fact, all we have is God's image. God confirms this in the poignant scene with Moshe Rabbeinu. Vayomar, hareini na et kavodecha. Moses says, even pleads, let me behold your presence. And God answered, I will make my goodness pass before you, and I will proclaim before you the name Adonai and the grace that I grant and the compassion that I show. Vayomer lo tuchal lirot et panai, ki lo yirani ha'adam v'chai. But, God says, you cannot see my face, for a human being may not see me and live. And here we get the first glimpse of God's image, the famous 13 attributes of God, well known to all of us. Vaya'avor Adonai al panav vayikra. Adonai, Adonai el rachum b'chanun, erech apayim v'rav chesed v'emet. Noter chesed la'alafim, nosei avon v'afeshe v'chata v'nakeh. Adonai passed before him and proclaimed, Adonai, Adonai, a God compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in kindness and faithfulness, extending kindness to the 1,000th generation, forgiving iniquity, transgression, and sin, and granting pardon. God tells us what part of God's image we can, in fact, comprehend and experience. Compassion, kindness, loyalty, patience, willingness to forgive. Now, this is a great start to my list, but as we are Jews, even God doesn't get the last word. Our tradition psalmists and liturgists, whose word we use in prayer every day, provide for us their image of God, and so help us understand intimately what it means to be made in God's image. In our daily tefillot, the repository of our tradition's values, God is said to be, perhaps imagined to be, gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and great in kindliness, good to all, supporting all the fallen and straightening all the bent, with an open hand, satisfying the desire of every living being, just in all his ways and benevolent in all his deeds, near to all who call upon him, loving the righteous, protecting strangers, orphans, and widows, thwarting the way of the wicked, maker of peace, creator of cures, healer of the brokenhearted, enduring, humbler of the haughty and raiser of the lowly, helper of the impoverished, answerer to his people when they cry out to him, supporter of the fallen and healer of the sick, restrainer of wrath, one who hears, an acceptor of repentance. Truly impossible to complete this list, I think, provides for me a more concrete image of God in which we have been made. So what do we do with these attributes and characteristics of God, which are necessarily part of us and which make us, as we have learned, uniquely human? Our tradition answers unequivocally. We are obligated to emulate God's attributes, such as being gracious, merciful, and holy. In his famed 12th century code of Jewish law, Mishneh Torah, Maimonides emphasizes the ethical imperative for Jews to follow the paths of righteousness and justice as much as they are able. He wrote, "Our sages taught the following explanation of this mitzvah. Just as he is called gracious, you shall be gracious. Just as he is called merciful, you shall be merciful. Just as he is called holy, you shall be holy." In a similar manner, the prophets called God by other titles: slow to anger, abundant in kindness, righteous, just, perfect, almighty, powerful, and the like. They did so to inform us that these are good and just paths. A person is obligated to accustom himself in these paths and to try to resemble God to the extent of his ability. All of this to remind you and me, we can't be God. We can only try to understand God to the extent we can and commit to emulating God's attributes the best we can in our necessarily imperfect, flawed ways. We will fall short precisely because we are not God. And that's what this week of repentance and introspection is all about. In a few days, we will remind ourselves not of how horrible we are, nor how bad we are, nor how much we have failed, but simply how human we are, having been made in the image of God without, of course, actually being God. Soon we will acknowledge our imperfect humanity via the Al-Chet prayer, for the sin of this and for the sin of that. As you read the list 5 times, you might notice that each sin listed corresponds, sometimes a bit creatively, to one of the attributes of God we have the potential to emulate. For example, if we have sinned by callously hardening our hearts, we are perhaps not being as gracious, compassionate, or merciful as we imagine God to be. Or maybe we are not opening our own hands to those who need our support as we imagine God does. For me, God's image, as I have described it, is the ideal, at once aspirational, yet fully unattainable. Even Moses knew this. In today's Torah reading, Parashat Vayelech, Moshe is moments away from leaving his people to die, lovingly, mercifully, and compassionately accompanied by God. Moshe emphatically predicts that the people will act wickedly and turn away from the path that he enjoined upon them. And he told Joshua's successor, Chazak ve'amat, "Be strong and resolute, for you shall bring the Israelites into the land." Our tradition asks much of us. It requires striving with strength and resolve. Fortunately, we can look to the dugma'ot, the role models, all around us, for inspiration, always knowing we can't be them exactly. And we can aspire to, resolve to, bringing ourselves closer and closer to the ultimate, the image of God, knowing we cannot be God, but through our actions, we can reflect God's image, and by so doing, make our corners of the world that much better, and perhaps be role models ourselves. Our task is simply to keep striving, As the famous Pirkei Avot quote reminds us, Lo alecha hamlacha ligmor velo ata v'en libatel mimena. Rabbi Tarfon used to say, it is not your duty to finish the work, but neither are you at liberty to neglect it. On Yom Kippur, we will remind ourselves that we may have come up short here and there. Surely I have, as I always do. My hope for myself and for all of us is that we are inspired to see each day not as a failure to be like Mike or like any other role model we may have, but simply as another opportunity to succeed at coming closer to our Jewish tradition's ideal of God's image, and we find the strength and resolve to keep trying. Shabbat Shalom, Gemar Chatima Tova.